In this video, I'm going to cover my solo Great Pendragon campaign from the years 489 through 493. As a reminder, these videos have massive spoilers for the Great Pendragon campaign, so I would suggest only watching these videos if you have already gone through these years in the Great Pendragon campaign. So here we go. We ended in 488, and as a recap, in 488, Arturius, my player knight, has achieved pretty much everything he's wanted to at this point in his life. He has become a pretty well-established knight of King Uther. He had a wife, Lady Adwin, and he ended up marrying Lady Maytane. He had a son, Sylvanus, with Lady Adwin in 486, and where we left off in 488, he had a daughter with Lady Maytane, whose name is Valentina. And that is where we enter in the year 489. So at Spring Court, a massive decision was made because Lady Adwin died a few years prior. Basically the year Sylvanus was born or the year after. He, Sylvanus, by law, in the way that I'm playing the game at least, should have those lands, those estates should be his. However, Lady Adwin's brother, Ash, obviously does not want Sylvanus to have those lands. He's like, Lady Adwin died, those should be family lands. And so in 489, or Spring Court, Sir Roderick rules that Adwin's estates do indeed belong to Sylvanus. However, he can only claim them when he turns 18. However, it is then made, of course, the decision is made that the Diddimston family will become stewards of the land until Sylvanus turns 18. Obviously, Adwin's brother Ash does not like this, and this puts the Diddimston family in a precarious position because if Sylvanus, for example, dies, they lose all the lands that they gained by marrying Lady Adwin. And so that sets the stage for basically the next 16 years. And disaster strikes for Arturius and the family at the end of 489 as Arturius dies in a Saxon skirmish in northern Logris. And that is how the year 489 ends. Now I'm going to pause right here and talk a little bit about what happens when a player knight dies. Pendragon is set up in a really good place. In fact, the entire system is set up with the expectation that your player knight will die at some point, and that is why the family tree is so important. There are actions taken during the family tree, during character creation, and during the winter turn, because having a robust family tree is extremely helpful. When your player knight dies, your family tree lives on, and you can just pick whichever knight you want from the family tree, roll up a new character, and continue on. It's a really great system, and it feels different when playing than something like Dungeon Crawl Classics or Dungeons and Dragons or even Traveler, because in all of those systems, of course, you roll up a new character when your character dies, but in Pendragon, your character's related. There's already history there. You can see how they've interacted with your previous player knight and the family as the years have gone on by. And so it doesn't feel necessarily like a completely fresh new start. In a lot of ways, it feels like a continuation of your previous knight, and that's one of the things that I love about the Pendragon system. So, unfortunately, the Diddimston family tree has had more deaths than knighthoods recently, after some bad rolls as I started the game, and there's not many choices available. Right now, Arturius is the only person in his family tree that is old enough to be a knight, as Adrastus had died. Cosmo is not knighted knight age yet, and that leaves illegitimate siblings. And really, that leaves Carmel. So my job was to come up a little bit more of a backstory with Carmel. Carmel had not been in the story so far. Not a lot is known about Carmel. And so I said, okay, he's kind of a black sheep of the family, right? He's an illegitimate child of Avitus, who is Iria's husband, and Iria is still with the family. So my understanding of the situation was that Iria did not want to have any of the illegitimate children around. And so Carmel and some of the others like Fulton and Tori have just been around in other places. They have not been taken under the wing of the Diddimston family. And Carmel, being a knight, has been successful in that situation, and he has become known as the Black Spear. So from what I can tell, Iria really has no other options. She's come over the last few years to enjoy the multiple estates and all the income that they have. And so she needs a knight to hold the estates over until Sylvanus is of age. Otherwise, she's going to lose the estates to Ash, who is the brother of Lady Adwin. So she and Carmel makes a deal. She says, Carmel will welcome you back into the family. You can serve as a knight. and you can be a knight in the family going forward even after Sylvanas becomes of age. However, you have to maintain the estates as they are. Carmel, this is a massive step up for him, agrees, and they work together going forward. So in 489, Carmel takes Iria with him to the Christmas court, and they meet with Roderick, and they basically discuss and say, hey, you remember earlier this spring when you said that the Diademston family can be stewards of Sylvanas' land until he turns 18? Well, our knight, Arturius, is dead. We propose that Carmel takes his place for now, and that we maintain stewardship over these lands. Well, Roderick does not agree. However, he does not change the arrangement. He basically defers the decision until Christmas Court of 490. Ash is smug, and really what this means that Carmel Blackspear has 1 full year to prove his worth for not only the Diademston name, but for Sir Roderick. And so the stage is set. Behind the scenes, Iria also goes to Lady Maytaine, who is Arturius' most recent wife, now widowed, and basically says, here's my suggestion to you. We think that you should stay with the Diademston family. When Cosmo is knighted, you can have his hand in marriage, because we also need your estates, essentially is what Iria is thinking. She wants to hang on to everything that she's gotten for the family, or her son Arturius has gotten for the family so far. Lady Maytaine agrees. Now, this still has to be proposed to Sir Roderick, but she agrees to this proposal. So enter 490, and the perfect opportunity for Carmel Blackspear arrives as a large battle, a huge battle is announced. He has to prove himself on the battlefield, and boy does he! Oh my gosh, he's a legend in this fight. The rolls were off the charts. He at some point has an opportunity to charge the Saxon king that they're fighting against. He fights bravely against the Saxon king's bodyguard, slaying one of the elite bodyguards of the Saxon king. He does not get through the bodyguards. However, his bravery and valor is noted in the battle. He then volunteers later in the year for more Saxon pillaging, and by the time the Christmas court rolls around, he has so much money. He donates 7 lira to Sir Roderick, just as like a bribe, but not stated as a bribe, just like, here, this should be yours. This is the glory that that we've earned together on the battlefield. And of course, Sir Roderick is over the moon with the Blackspear's bravery and valor through the year. Not only does Sir Roderick agree to the stewardship of Sylvanas' land staying within the Diademston family, but he also agrees to the plan that Lady Maytaine marries Cosmo upon his knighthood, which will occur in 494. So essentially, the next few years are secured in the Diademston family. Carmel Blackspear has basically done everything he needed to in his very first year at the helm as the knight for the Diademston family. Iria gets what she wants, Carmel Blackspear gets what he wants, and everyone is happy. Now in 491, something crazy happens, because Carmel Blackspear, up until this point in his life, has been really known as Carmel the Chaste. That's like one of his other nicknames. And I imagine that it really comes from his station. He was the illegitimate child of Avitus and some unknown person. He was cast out from the family by Iria's hand, and he never wanted that to happen to any other child. And I imagine that is why he is chaste. Well, in 491, he ends up falling head over heels in some foreign castle for another Lady Adwin, no relation. He ends up having some sort of romantic fling with her. It's undetermined what that looks like. However, it is the brother of this other Lady Adwin that takes offense. They have a duel, and Carmel loses the duel to first blood. He's injured, but not greatly so. And so he loses his Carmel the Chaste nickname as he finally falls for a lady. However, he maintains the Blackspear nickname, even though his prowess on the battlefield is slightly shook. Rumors are that he purposefully lost the duel, having not wanting to injure the love of his life's brother. Not much else comes from that. He does see that same Lady Adwin in 492, but he stays away from her as perhaps he's learned his lesson. However, 492 disaster almost strikes as Merlin gives orders to Carmel Blackspear and a few others. They end up fighting some other knights, and they come to find out they were on the wrong side and Merlin's orders were treacherous, and they have to go to court. Fortunately for the Dittmeston family, they hail from Rome, way back when they were Romans. Gregarious himself, I believe, was actually, well, I don't know if the timing works out, but he was as Roman as you could get in these parts. And if there's one thing that the Romans know, they know the law. Carmel Blackspear is able to basically argue his way out of the accusations against him and the other knights. He ends up in a positive position at the end of this trial. Luckily, because the everything that he had basically secured for the family 2 years prior was on trial with this trial. The only other thing of note that happened in 492 is Salvatorix, his cousin, half-cousin I suppose, has an illegitimate child with an unknown person. This illegitimate child's name is Anglilla. I don't know how to say that name. Anyways, cousin Salvatorix wants Carmel to adopt this child. Carmel, aghast because, you know, he was in a similar situation, tells his cousin that you need to take care of this child as if it is your own. No child should be cast out. And cousin Salvatorix listens. Then in 493, Carmel's bravery in another battle actually moves Sir Roderick to the point where Sir Roderick offers Carmel a hand in marriage. Basically what this is doing, because remember, Cosmo is going to get married and knighted in 494, and that would potentially cast Carmel Blackspear not out, because Iria's already agreed to keep him in the house now, within the estates as a knight for their family. But Roderick is basically offering Carmel a legitimate hand in marriage, which means he's going to get a legitimate line. However, Carmel presumably only has one love of his life, this Lady Adwin from a far-off land, and he declines. And that ends 493, and really that ends Carmel Blackspear's time as my player knight, as in 494 Cosmo gets knighted, Cosmo gets married, and he becomes the player knight of the Dittmeston family. So this is getting to the end of the King Uther period, ish. And it was really fun. You know, this is my first time working with another player knight, and it was one, after 490 at least, that I knew would be a very short stint. I knew I would only have about 4 years. That's about 4 play sessions, 3 or 4 play sessions with Carmel. So I was able to kind of play him with reckless abandon, knowing that I didn't have a lot of future with Carmel Blackspear, and it all worked out. He really only lost one fight, and it was that duel. Other than that, the guy was awesome in battle, and that was super fun. It reminded me a lot of the Blackfish from the Game of Thrones books. One thing I did want to note here in the family tree, Arturius, as much as he did good for the family, he still did not live up to his, what would that be, his great-great-grandfather's name. If you look at the glory here, Gregorius had 3,000, Carpus 2,480, and then Avitus 1,539. So each of the knights, the household knights, the head of the households, has really gone downhill. Arturius definitely outshined his father Avitus. However, he did not quite outshine Carpus, and that is kind of a problem, I guess. The other interesting thing is at the end of 493, Carmel has outshined Arturius. He's not dead, so he does have more glory coming his way potentially. But Carmel Blackspear did more in 4 years than Arturius did in his time as a knight, or anybody else as far as glory goes. And that was really fun to play. So those are my years for the Great Pendragon campaign, 489 to 493. I'll have more of these videos coming out sporadically. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What were your experiences during these years? What else would you like to see? A lot of what I cover in these videos is based on the comments and questions people have, so let me know. Links for some of the resources I use are also in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.